We're so excited to host this presentation by RISD alumni and trustee Gabrielle Bullock, who will talk about her latest project, Destination Crenshaw, which is actually right here in LA. Just a few things before we get started. This event is being recorded. Also, if we will have an audience Q&A portion at the end of the program. So if you have any questions for Gabrielle, please submit them through the Zoom Q&A function. It is an honor to introduce Gabrielle Bullock, who graduated from RISD in 1984 with a degree in Fine Arts and Architecture, becoming the second African-American woman to do so at RISD. She is Principal and Director of Global Diversity at Perkins&Will. Over the course of her career, Gabrielle has led numerous complex and high-profile projects. She is regularly sought out around the world for her leadership and expertise in issues of social equity and architecture. Without further ado, please welcome Gabrielle Bullock.
Thank you, Cristina, and good morning, everybody. So the changing faces of design, and I mean that figuratively and literally, to address the historical homogeneous nature of our profession from academia to practice, and in response to current indicators from the societal crisis demands by clients, professionals, and students to transform architecture, to change to be more representative and equitable, a more equitable design profession. So I use my story to demonstrate the sense of urgency to change the faces of design and how we design through my journey and an example with Destination Crenshaw. So I'm a New Yorker originally, and well, actually I'll always be a New Yorker. But at 12, I realized that the public housing projects in New York were inhumane. And so at a very early age of 12, I decided I wanted to be an architect to make a positive impact on people, and particularly people of color. Everybody deserves a beautiful place to live. So at RISD for 5 years, and with an exceptional education, I would say lack of diversity, lack of an inclusive curriculum, and RISD was not much different than any other design school. But I didn't see my lived experience represented in the curriculum. I didn't hear about or learn about Paul Revere Williams. I didn't hear about Norma Clark, two prominent Black architects. But I persevered. Housing was my passion. So I completed my thesis. I had the foundation from RISD. And in the end, with my thesis focusing on housing in Harlem, I felt I completed what I set out to do from an academic standpoint. So as Cristina said, I was the second African-American woman to graduate from the architecture department. And as I said, you know, the design education probably still is today, but back then, you know, the architecture lingo was hard to relate to. Not having examples of architects that looked like me, that had lived experiences like me, that represented the culture that I was familiar with and the culture that I wanted to impact was a challenge. And, you know, being the only one in the room, both then and frequently now, while I don't see it as a deterrent, it has shaped part of my perspective. But I embrace my difference, as I think we should all embrace all differences. There are only 502 African-American licensed architects, women architects in this country. That is one of the reasons why I am keen on focusing on a more equitable and inclusive profession overall. More importantly, I got into architecture to serve my passion, purpose, and have impact. And so after graduating from RISD, working for 3 firms in my first recession in the 80s, all 3 firms doing low-income housing went belly up. But I knew that whatever I did in the profession, it had to have purpose. And so this led me to designing for healthcare and eventually doing the work I do today. And we didn't call it social purpose back then. So over my career, lots of healthcare, large healthcare systems, University of California, Ronald Reagan Medical Center, several projects in the Middle East, a large first co-ed university in Jeddah, a hospital in Jeddah, a pediatrics hospital in Jeddah. So all of those really had a cultural significance, a different culture that required lots of research, all the way to small beautification projects for outpatient facilities, to a Girl Scout camp here in Los Angeles, stemming from my position on the board there. So all of my work really, as I said, had to have some cultural significance, an impact on the community. I was not interested in glossy towers. I really wanted to make an impact. And in 2013, right when I finished the three JEDI projects, the concept of cultural competency and the research required to design in a more authentic way was my aha moment. And so I was at a transition point at Perkins&Will, and I proposed a focus on promoting change in the profession through creating a diversity, inclusion, and engagement program for the firm. It was my way of saying I was mid-career, established a trust with Perkins&Will and they with me, that I had a seat at the table. And so what was I going to do with my seat? We are keen on, being a beacon of social justice and equity, representing the communities we serve, and making meaningful change and not just lip service. This is our position statement around justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. The 4 focus pillars are building a culture in the firm, establishing it as a core value in the firm, and to build the pipeline so that, for instance, that there's more than 502 in the not too distant future, and that we lead the way in the industry for the entire profession to be more diverse and inclusive. As I said, we're keen on challenging the status quo and leading with justice and equity to achieve diversity and inclusion. We look at everything we do in practice through the JEDI lens. And when it comes to our work, if last year didn't ring a bell or present an opportunity for a reset in our society, I don't know what would. The impact on the pandemic, on marginalized and underrepresented groups was disproportionate in communities of color. And I hope you don't hear my dog yapping. We're looking at the impact of structural and institutional inequities, structural and institutional racism that contribute to the problem and inequities in what we do. And they lead to adverse outcomes and conditions for communities, or inadvertently detrimental to communities of color, like zoning and covenants. And architects tend to stay in their lane and see things, well, it's always been that way. I propose that we need to challenge all of these things, understand what those barriers are, and to help tear them down, to provide a more equitable society. Understanding the unequal opportunities and outcomes based on social oppression in all of these areas of our society. And these are all things that we are grappling with and learning within our firm, but it does require a transformation. We need to step out of our comfort zone, have the difficult conversations around race, exclusion, and equity, educate ourselves, and understand the history of how we got here. We can't move forward if we don't understand what we're trying to change. and recognizing our role as stewards in dismantling these barriers and embrace the full spectrum of our society through equitable design. Understanding the civil rights movement and what it meant to the decades of struggle of African Americans and allies. To understand what urban renewal did to our cities, to our urban environments, and what our opportunity is to reverse that in some way or not perpetuate its outcomes. Planned shrinkage, public policies of withdrawal of city services to blighted neighborhoods. In working with a very diverse team within the firm, all of these situations, I'll call them, weren't fully understood. And so we are obligated to provide education and awareness. Gentrification and the cultural erasure and displacement are three key conditions that we focus on when we are working in urban areas. Some resources that we are reading, learning, and others, and I encourage anybody in the architecture profession to do their research and to understand how these things affect us. So, on to Destination Crenshaw, which is an outdoor art and cultural experience in Los Angeles, in the Crenshaw district, which is the largest Black community west of the Mississippi. The impetus for this project is the extension of the metro train system from the airport down at the bottom of the screen to the top, to the extension to downtown. And it goes right through the Crenshaw district, which is the Black community. And there's a 1.3 mile stretch where the train is at grade. It's not below grade, it's not elevated. And unlike most commercial districts in LA, where there's been a train extension, it's either been elevated or below grade. So this posed a really a challenge for this community. It threatened to obliterate, the commercial area, to bifurcate it. And so the community decided to make lemonade out of lemons and create this 1.3 mile outdoor cultural arts experience. Some images of, an image of the area. That's the train being built in the center of the boulevard. Crenshaw Boulevard is quite wide in both directions. There's largely commercial areas, stores along both sides, and one block over in either direction starts the residential. So the residential area is quite close. And it extends from about 59th Street to 48th Street. North is to your right. And, has several major intersections. The orange part is the only stop. So the next stop is to the north at Leimert Park. The goal and the vision of the project was, as I said, create this art and cultural experience that's dedicated to legitimizing and celebrating the culture of Crenshaw and to contribute to the overall health and sustainability by celebrating its heritage, leveraging its assets, and create a unique experience to catalyze growth for the community and beyond. Our goals, right? Placekeeping, not placemaking. This community has been here for decades. It is a intact community, so we're not recreating it. We are engaging the community as design partners to give them design agency. We are not coming in and telling them what they need. We're listening to what they need, what they think they need, and they're sharing their experiences. We're keen on avoiding cultural erasure. And we do that by exploring their experiences, the cultural contributions, their stories. We are partners, we are not saviors. And economic catalysts This is meant to be an economic catalyst and a model for social equity in Black communities and other community revitalizations across the country. This picture here is the Endeavor that was transported to the Science Museum, which is not too far from Crenshaw Boulevard. And it came down Crenshaw Boulevard. They removed every single tree. Those trees have not been replaced, but will be replaced as part of this project. But we're talking 10 or so years without trees on this boulevard. Perkins&Will was direct selected for this project, largely because of our experience with cultural and civic work, including the National Museum of African American History and Culture. Also because our core team members have a cultural competency, a connection, and they represent the community. That was very important for this client. And the client started out as a community group, a council member, his team. It's now a not-for-profit, so it's its own entity. It was very important for them to have what I interpret as a shorthand connection to the culture of the community. Timing was very important at the time. They wanted to beat the train, because once the train came in, if there wasn't something to get folks off the train, then, you know, it would not benefit from the train. The community would not benefit. So these are our key team members. We have other team members. Here's our larger team. It is a architecture, landscape, exhibit design, structural, and public art. So the concept for this project started out through lots and lots of conversations with the community to understand the genesis of the community. And it started out with understanding the migration of Black Americans from the South and beyond that, from Africa during the slave trade, but from the South to the West. And it was quite a large migration. And, you know, they've experienced root shock, where they're uprooted, disinvested, all of that. And so we looked at the giant star grass, which was used as bedding hay in slave ships. It is a hardy, hard to kill grass with a horizontal root system with a 5-strand leaf coming off of it. And in the US, it's Bermuda grass. So what reminded us of this community was its hardiness, its resilience. It can withstand root shock, and it just continues to grow. And I love this quote by Mindy Fullilove, and if you've not read Root Shock, it's a wonderful book. A slum would endure if residents left as quickly as they could. A neighborhood could transform itself if people wanted to stay. So it was the investment of time, money, and love that would make the difference. And that, in a nutshell, is what we are after, creating resiliency in this community. So if we overlay what looks like a root system on Crenshaw Boulevard, the 1.3 miles, and we thought about modes of interpreting the experience through 4 thematic themes. Improvisation at the Slauson Avenue intersection, which celebrates resourcefulness as the positive outcome of struggle. Nipsey Hussle's store marathon is at that intersection. He was a musician, an artist, and a great community investor and supporter. At 54th Street, we have Firsts, which would celebrate first-person stories of significant moments and historical firsts. Dreams at 50th Street, which is coincidentally at the Crenshaw High School, celebrates the realm of daydreaming, this seemingly impossible and aspirations free of constraints. And then finally at the north, our largest intervention and park is, the theme is togetherness at 46th Street. And it celebrates the resilience of the Black culture born out of togetherness that is both ancestral and an ongoing necessity. So with those themes in mind, our series of 10 pocket parks, 8 to 10 large public art installations, along with 50 or more murals, will all be focused on unapologetically Black LA stories. The art curation team, which is made up of local senior artists, will help vet those stories and make sure that they are appropriate. And the stories and the park's design will all relate to those 4 themes, along with the exhibit design. These pocket parks and interventions are both on private property and public property parking lots, couple of parking spots, and things like that. Anywhere we could create an intervention along the boulevard. So the root system, so we've created the unifying design concept around the Bermuda, the Stargrass, and it shows up as the paving pattern, sort of reminiscent of the rhizome root structure down the boulevard. Our shade structures is reminiscent of the Stargrass. And the rhizome pattern, so they only go in one direction. At the end of them, you may see an artist's plaque and so forth. So the connective tissue is meant to tie the entire experience together on both sides of the boulevard. This is how it might show up at a pocket park with the shade structures, the paving, the benches. I'm just gonna breeze through some of these. There will be an opportunity for artist work embedded in the paving along the 1.3 miles. And all of these pocket parks will have major artwork. I cannot show you the artwork because it's not been revealed yet. And I think I have a client on the call, so just wanted to say that. So, but there will be major significant public art. This is what the train tracks look like. We have provided the landscape design, and we wanted to do more intervention on the boulevard at the intersections in the road, but it was all thought to be a distraction and a potential safety hazard with the train. The exhibit elements are all part of telling the story, and they've been as curated as the pocket parks and the public art. So just some ideas from the typography to the stories that will be told, all relate to this community and Black culture in general. There will be a digital component to the entire experience. The story-driven look and feel has to do with what stories we're going to tell, and creating the graphics that best represent the story to be told. And here are some images of some of the pocket parks. You'll see that some of the shade structures are yellow, some are dark gray. We started out with yellow. They will be dark gray. So we will, update all the renderings as we go. There's meant to be a landmark. This may not be the exact landmark, but at the south end, have a tall beacon that says you have arrived at Crenshaw, at Destination Crenshaw. And the big park at the other end will be the other bookend, if you will. Park of play, where there's play structures or mounds, areas to sit, walk through, rest, major artwork. Every available wall will be an opportunity for an artist. Also opportunities for donor recognition, all along the boulevard. At Crenshaw High School, there is blank wall. So we will engage the high school students to create a mural for this particular location. Across the street from a historic wall that I'm going to share with you in a minute, with the train coming in, there was no opportunity to continue to see the wall. So we've created a pocket park that has an elevated platform to see the park across the street, the wall across the street. And this is another view of that park. Some of the parks are, it's pass, linger, gather. So some parks are meant to pass by, some linger, sit, play, and others large enough to gather and to socialize. This is the wall. And this wall has been in place since the 70s. It was designed and instituted by local artists. It was a grassroots effort. So as part of this project, we will we'll fix it up. We'll engage the artists again. We've created a passageway up to a small parklet above the wall and a monument announcing you're at the wall. An exciting thing about the digital component of this project is that the digital component you'll be able to walk up to this wall and get information about each section of the mural, who did it, its history, etc. And because it's 1.3 miles in August in California is not so good. So what's great about the digital component is that you'll be able to experience this even if you're not standing right in front of it. Just another view looking from on top of the wall across to the viewing platform park. And the last park is Sankofa Park, as I said, the largest one. And it's right at, right before we get to Lemert Park, which is another neighborhood. And it's, an elevated concrete platform park meant and is big enough to gather on top, along, underneath for large gatherings. This park will have the most public art in it. I think there's something like 5 or 6 major public artists will be featured here. Oh, let me go back. On the underside of the ramp, there will be an opportunity for artists' interpretation of major figures. And who is represented under here will be vetted quite extensively by the community and the client to make sure that it's appropriate and the criteria is consistent. Top viewing platform. So Sankofa is a bird, and its head can turn around quite a wide range. And the best interpretation of what Sankofa means that I've seen is that it means to go back and get what's taken. Go back and get what is yours. And that is the name of this park. And it really is, engaging the community as a design partner. And I'm not just saying that is truly what they've been. I consider them designers as part of this project, and will make it that much more successful because they have been engaged. Is their story. We're just helping them tell it. And so what does success look like? If we are successful, this will be an iconic boulevard, not only for the local community, but for visitors and investment. It will amplify the culture and art to broader audiences, and it will become a community asset and gathering place that offers intergenerational engagement and exchange. Some of the just summary of the, how you can create a visionary design solutions. I think it starts with cultural competency, and really strive to the highest level of cultural competence, where people unconsciously hold culture in the highest esteem and use this to guide their work, as opposed to the one at the bottom where it's belittled. I don't think we're at the bottom. I would say the architecture profession is somewhere between cultural blindness and cultural precompetence. Understanding social equity, and that any part of this triangle that is broken or unfair or inequitable, then I think the whole thing falls apart, and then it will not be sustainable or resilient. And I don't think that we can afford to have one part of society broken. If one's broken, it's all broken. And again, I can't stress enough, community as design partner, the engagement, the sense of belonging, safety, and wellness, all are a result of that sort of collaboration, both at the individual, neighborhood, and community and city level. And it's time to create a new baseline for equity. We have to walk the walk, change our design processes, look at it through the JEDI lens, and align with our clients. And so with that, I close. My vision was solid. And as you can see, I didn't really have a plan B. And I don't think we can ignore the impact we have on people, communities, and society. So we have a responsibility to design with these concepts in mind and transform toward a more equitable profession. I set out to change the world in my own little way, and I challenge each of you to do the same. Find a way to get in the way, make good trouble. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gabrielle. This was such an amazing project to share.
Can you unshare me? Because somehow I can't do it now. Okay, good. Thank you.
For everybody who has questions, please go ahead and use the Q&A function. Gabrielle will be here for a little bit longer, so it will be great to hear some questions from you guys. We already have some coming in, so let's go ahead and start. As a resident of South LA, I would love to know how to get involved in this project.
Okay, so Destination Crenshaw has a robust website. I suggest you go there. I don't know what your expertise is or your passion. How do you want to get engaged? I think there's lots of opportunities to get involved. So I can't go into specifics because I'm not sure if you can share with me what it is you're looking to participate in. And if you're an artist and want to be considered for a mural, there are open calls. There's a whole program that's going to be rolled out for rotating artist participation on the banners, on the murals, and lots of other opportunities.
Wonderful.
Hope that answers your question.
So yeah, John, if you just want to, I think we linked the website to Destination Crenshaw. So go ahead and look at that, and hopefully you can find a way to get involved.
And if you run into a problem, reach out to me. I'm easy to find.
Can you speak to any materials or design choices you made with regard to sustainability?
Well, the landscape is all local, indigenous, right? The materials, so it's outdoor, right? So there's not any mechanical and all that stuff. I think the DMD material that we're using was, I don't know if you consider this sustainable, but we used a material that will age and not bleed and look dingy and dirty, right? That was we spent a lot of time considering the materials at Sankofa Park and the benches, because the worst thing you can do is create something that looks good one day on day one, and day 10, 10 years later, it looks terrible. So, yeah. So those are the sustainability components.
That's wonderful.
We're not going for lead for for community necessarily.
Mm-hmm. Are there any crossovers across the tracks?
I just did this presentation and I got that same question. We originally wanted to somehow visually connect one side of the boulevard to the other with artwork in the pavement, at the crosswalks. I think you saw in one of the slides, the bike lane, it was a, image of a long arm with a fist. All of those were deemed safety hazards by the city. Mm. They didn't want any distraction if someone's crossing the boulevard, and therein lies the inherent challenge of an at-grade train, right?
Yeah.
So I think the connection that we're working on now is a visual one, and also the digital application that will get you to, if you're on the app and you read about something across the street, then you'll cross the boulevard. I think folks that live there will take their time and see everything. I don't foresee a lot of people, well, certainly certain times of the year, you're not going to walk 1.3 miles down that boulevard to see everything.
Oh, for sure. Can you discuss the timeline of the project and the expected completion date?
The expected completion date for everything is about third quarter 2022. It will be done in phases. So series of pocket parks and the boulevard. Sankofa is the biggest component, and so that will take probably the longest. So total completion next year, third quarter-ish.
That's wonderful.
Right now they're doing some storm drain relocation, so looks like a big infrastructure project right now.
That's exciting. So next one, love the JEDI lens concept. You came to this project with many professional successes under your belt, the support of your firm, and lots of credibility. How can someone just starting out without those assets work towards making a similar impact in similar community-based projects? That's a great question.
So impact on the work or on the organization that they're with?
Good question. Maybe we'll wait for that answer. Let's see. Here we go. On the organization.
Oh, so how we started was someone like me thought something needed to change. I think that's where it starts. I also think if the organization is not one that empowers or is interested in it, then it's probably going to be an uphill battle. But I think if we can all take stock of our current culture from a gender perspective, from a race perspective, what kind of work are we doing? Are we helping or hurting our communities with the work that we do? Take stock of what your current culture is and what is the culture that you want. And then you'll be able to figure out what needs to change. I think for a firm like Perkins&Will, we did everything. We looked at the entire bucket. Now it's taken, I've been doing this for 8 years now. We're not all the way there yet. This is a journey. So that's the first cautionary tale that I would impart on folks, is that this is a journey and it will take many, many years, if ever complete, right? So I think it's a little bit at a time. I think if we all know somebody in elementary school or middle school or high school, introduce architecture and design to those students, particularly students of color.
That's so true.
That helps. I'll direct you to a white paper that I wrote, I co-authored with the AIA, how to build a JEDI culture in your organization. And it's available to everybody. It's a 6-step, just to start, things to consider.
That's amazing. So Leslie had a question, who is paying for this?
Who's paying for this? It is largely privately funded through philanthropy.
That's amazing.
There is some contribution from the state of California, from Metro, and I believe the city.
That's great. And I guess, what's your favorite part of the project?
My favorite part are the stories. It's the stories and how they'll be integrated with the art, right? So I'll be really excited when I can walk along the boulevard and feel and see what we've been designing and talking about for 3 years. My other most, I really loved the design process with the community. I loved being challenged by them. I loved us having to question our decisions. Why are you doing this? Because if they, so we were, I think we challenged the status quo. And so that was exciting to me. It was the first time since working on the JEDI focus that I've been able to see it in action in our work, right? We can talk about firm culture till we're blue in the face. It's when we figure out how it shows up in our work. And there is no magic bullet to that, except for questioning and listening.
How did you go about having those conversations with the community? And did you get any sort of pushback, or was it fairly natural now that we're talking about it?
I wouldn't call it pushback. They were, they challenge, if we missed the mark on we listened a lot. We said, okay, well, maybe I'm just going to use an example, and I can't think of a real one, but we said, well, what about this story to be told? Well, if they thought that was missing the mark, they'd explain why. I'll give you an example. Initially, I may have thought that this was going to be a chronological storytelling about history of the community. That's exactly what they didn't want. They wanted current day. They didn't want to repeat what's already occurred or represented somewhere else in Los Angeles. There is a Biddy Mason story. There are stories and art representation for the settlers and all of that. So that was very interesting. And even how we can describe the experience that we're looking for, but if you can't describe it in the way that they think it's supposed to go, right? So the architectural jargon has to go right out the window. Right? These are smart folks. This is a smart community, and they know what they want, and they were very, very articulate in what they wanted to see and feel, and what they didn't want to. Lots of, so, I can go on and on, but.
That's wonderful. I'm glad that they were very engaged, as anybody would with any type of project like that coming into their community. So it's really great.
Well, I think they see it as we own this. This is our community, right? And so in the town halls and in the workshops, right, it was, how are we delivering the message? Who's delivering the message? Right? It was very important.
Very important. We have an anonymous question. Do you have any advice for students?
I'm sorry?
Do you have any advice for students?
Oh, I got tons.
Advice.
For students, I say follow your passion and use your voice. I didn't use my voice when I was a student. I didn't think I could. I didn't want to be shut down. I didn't want to be, so what, you're the only one in the room. Well, I think now more than ever, students have the power. Their voices are important. Universities all over this country are responding to student demands around equity, diversity, curriculum, and representation. And I would also suggest that this is a long career. It's an involved career. So find your passion within it. And if skyscrapers are it, go for it. And find firms and places to work that support your passion and support a culture of inclusion.
We have another question. Do you have any thoughts on how the community will build upon this project once it is done?
I think the community will build upon it through more businesses and stronger businesses, right? So this is just not a beauty project. The real benefit will be what it does to the businesses along the boulevard, right? And what it does to celebrate and promote the culture, the art culture, all the culture. So I think it's going to bring jobs. I think it's going to make businesses more successful. And in that regard, the train is a benefit, right? Because it's bringing folks here straight from LA, from the airport or through here, right? So I think there's a lot of opportunity for more exposure and to take the mystique or the danger, out of the area from those who don't know anything about it.
Yeah. And we had two questions that were very similar. Do you have any current or future projects that you can mention?
I can, but I can't tell you the name of it. But it's along these, so we're working on this project right now. Mm-hmm. It is about a healthy food and financial and food literacy market for the Black and Brown communities to combat the food desert, right? Whole food's too expensive, right? The whole business model around markets. So this person is from this very area where Destination Crenshaw is, and is in a position to give back and to make a change. And she's committed to healthy food, all the ills, healthcare ills that Black and Brown communities suffer from, obesity, children, foster children, young mothers. And so I've not, since this project, seen someone who had such a large vision, we had to tamp it down. Mm-hmm. Right? I was like, this is not just the market. You have other things that you need to do to meet your vision. So those are the exciting projects. And I think it's an example of those that have the means and are committed to improving communities and enhancing communities. They're stepping up. Mm-hmm. And they're looking for firms who are interested in doing the same.
That's wonderful. It's a great thing to see for sure. So going back to the Crenshaw project, how long was the process of getting community feedback to from design to completion, I guess?
Well, it's never done. Uh-huh. And I wouldn't even call it feedback, right? I'm not even sure I'd call it input. It wasn't that formal. And like I said, it will never be done. So we've been working on this for about 3 years, and we went in stages, right? So there was the foundation team, which was, the architecture, the infrastructure. The biggest component that engaged community was the stories. How to tell the stories, where to tell the stories, where to put parks. So as long as we've been on it, they've been engaged. Mm-hmm. I think total sign-off probably took 2 years, about 2 years of the project. Mm-hmm. And it's not a traditional project. When we started this project, we all knew if anybody thinks this is the traditional, design approval, construction, this is not like that. So everybody bought into the non-linear process. Mm-hmm. So I think the last thing to get approved are the exhibit design and the stories, the mm-hmm. final stories, and that could take a while.
Yeah. Will the app with the virtual elements be available for people not in the area?
I believe so, yeah.
That's great.
I don't know the full detail, but that is the hope, that you could go to the website even. Mm-hmm. And yeah.
Wonderful. So as far as the art is concerned, and for the audience, please go ahead and ask any other questions. But as far as the art is concerned, you spoke about there being an approval process. Is there an idea of changing the artwork yearly or every twice a year, or any sort of a turnaround, I guess, to give more artists the opportunity?
Right. So there's definitely a plan to change the 2D works of art on some regular basis. I don't know what that is. And it's meant to give many artists opportunities on the long haul, right? This is not going to be one and done. So, but again, I don't know the interval. I don't think that's worked out yet. I think the first round of 2D solicitation or listing or vetting is in process. So yeah, I think there's another part of the program where all the utility boxes, that's going to be an art opportunity for local artists, emerging artists, and that'll be as permanent as till somebody messes it up or time the utility company comes and paints over it, or so I think there's lots of those things. The banners, right, will be an artist, they'll be artist designed.
So this project, I feel like, is very unique, and I'm a textile major, so I'm not an architect, but to me it seems like a very beautiful and unique project. And do you see it maybe paving the way for a lot more opportunities in different cities?
I absolutely do. And I think a lot of cities are watching this. I know that our client, the council member, before launching this, visited other, like the High Line in New York, the Belt Line, Harlem. And so he has an idea of what success looks like and what it doesn't. So the intent and the hope is that this will be a model for other cities.
That would be amazing. That would be really great. I guess I wrote down a bunch of questions as you were speaking because I got really excited, but I think you answered the majority of them. Let me see. So I guess I'm kind of curious, living in LA, did you get a lot of pushback as far as like red tape from the city, or was it really kind of?
We actually got, and initially the schedule was, we were trying to beat the train. So that meant that approval processes, if we could get them concurrently, right? So we worked with the city to create a one meeting or one review process that had all the entities at the table to avoid going from department to department, right? And so that helped the process along the way. So we did not have a lot of city red tape.
That's wonderful. That's really great. Yeah, I guess I'm kind of curious because this isn't obviously my field, but do you feel like there are a lot of firms who take on projects of this magnitude and with the social consciousness that you have, or is that something that's hopefully going to be growing even more?
I think there's an increased interest in cities and communities, particularly after the events of last summer, to do this. I know of some in Oregon. I know, I know some in some other places that are trying to figure this out and tackle it. I think many firms want to do this work because it's, flavor of the day. But I would encourage everybody to engage other associate architects, design firms, artists who have done it, and learn from them, and share the engagement. Because what could be detrimental is if we as a profession think that we can just go do it without doing our research, without being culturally competent. I think anybody can do it if they have the tools, the representation, and the commitment. Yeah. Right. So, I mean, I think there's going to be more and more of this.
Well, let's hope that's going to be the case. Well, thank you so much, Gabrielle. I think on that note, we'll go ahead and wrap things up. We're so excited to see the project when it's complete, and hopefully we can have an in-person event there. And thank you all for attending. The Club of LA and RISD Architects regularly host events. So we hope you can join us for some future events in the future. Thank you again to everyone, and thank you, Gabrielle.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye.